Good afternoon, podcast world. This is Mark Bassingthwaighte. I'm the risk manager with ALPS. Welcome to the latest episode of ALPS in Brief, the podcast that comes to you from the historic Florence building in beautiful downtown Missoula, Montana. I've got a treat for you today, and honestly, it is very much an honor and privilege to introduce our guest today because there's a family relationship here. This is our oldest son, Tristan Bassingthwaighte, and Tristan has an interesting story to share we're going to talk about and just have a little fun. And at the end, trust me, there is a message here that relates to the practice of law. But before we jump into our conversation and share why we're interviewing Tristan, Tristan, could you just take a little time and share whatever you'd like to share about yourself for our listeners?
I am originally from Montana as well. I've spent the last 10 years or so living in Hawaii and around the world. Have 3 architectural degrees with a focus in space architecture and extreme environmental design. Design t-shirts on the side just for fun. And as part of my research for the doctoral studies, got to live in a simulated Mars base for a year for NASA.
Very cool. And that's what we're going to talk about. And when Tristan talks about his experiences, I have caught up with him in Singapore, where he was doing an internship. I caught up with him in Bangkok, it was just
spring study abroad.
A spring study abroad. That's right. He's been in Copenhagen, did a year in Shanghai, but we're here to talk about this Mars simulation. And Tristan, again, can you give us a little background? Who runs this simulation? What are we talking about in terms of the name of the project and a little background?
The simulation itself is called High Seas. It's for the Hawaiian Space Exploration Analog and Simulation. It's run by UH with a partnership of 10 to 15 other universities around the world. And NASA actually gave the program about $17 million to do a series of simulations studying social and psychological aspects of long-duration isolation, confinement, essentially trying to find a way to pick a crew for an actual Mars mission that will not self-destruct, remain happy, sort of soft topics, people research.
Yes. As a dad, I remember fondly over the years, and I can recall when you were even a wee young one running around the house, you would say things like, Dad, I'm going to be an astronaut someday, and Dad, I'm going to go to Mars. And I guess technically, with all the things going on with SpaceX, I guess it's still, who knows what's going to happen here. But in your own way, you've already done it. And it's just an interesting path. Can you tell us a little bit more about, how did you end up here? What got you into the program? How did this all play?
Honestly, it was a giant, almost mistake. I was doing research while living in Shanghai for my master's on extreme environmental design, and I came across the blog of a Jocelyn Dunn, who was the science officer for High Seas 3. And while you can't do any direct communication because at the time she was in her simulation, you can leave comments on blog posts and they can respond. I asked her a bunch of questions since it was related to my research. She got back with her actual mission email, and I got a bunch of fun stuff, good data. And she suggested that I was interested enough, maybe I should give the next mission a shot. And I said, what mission? I had no idea there was going to be another one, and it turned out that it was out of my home university back in Hawaii, so I just kind of applied on a lark and did all the sociology tests online, did the Skype interviews, talked to the psychologists, and got it all narrowed down, and then was quite surprised when they invited me to the wilderness survival in Wyoming. So went out there, we did a week in the bush, and they picked the final 6, and I made the cut. I found out later a lot of the people who were also selected for crew specifically told them they wouldn't go without me. So I went from not knowing that High Seas existed to being locked in the dome in about 3.5 months.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, and for those of you listening, this turned out to be, and I think still holds true to this day, the longest simulated mission run. Am I correct?
It's the longest NASA Mars simulation mission run. They've got one or two longer out of Russia and China, but they were extended isolation experiments, not so much mission simulations.
Yes, and this project, again, listener, went 366 days.
Yeah, we got it on a leap year.
Yeah, really. And I want to underscore one point. You shared a comment here about the delay talking to the person that initially got you interested in this. As a parent, when Tristan was on Mars, quote unquote, there is a delay. You cannot have real-time Skype or real-time email or anything. You can send an email and it takes 40 minutes because that would be the amount of time a signal would normally take to go to Mars. So
round trip.
Everything about this simulation, they really did everything they could to make it feel very, very real. So it's just an interesting process. What was your role?
I came in as the crew architect, essentially. So more of a research role than anything because the HAB was designed. But while in there, I was conducting research on how people were reacting to the environment, how we might be able to change it for another series of experiments. I also managed all of the EVAs, paperwork, and was one of the de facto head chefs.
Ah, yes. Which I gotta say again, as a dad growing up, Tristan wasn't known in the house or within the family as a culinary wizard. He has a younger sister who actually went to the Culinary Institute of America in New York and is an extremely talented person in the kitchen. But it's been nice that Tristan has since really developed some skills, so I'm proud of that as well.
Unfortunately, mostly with dehydrated foods.
Well, that's true. Actually, you should share a little bit about that. What was it like in terms of just, can you give us just a quick overview, of what day-to-day life is like in this dome? I mean, in the amount of space? Can you take a shower? Do you have personal space? Can you just give us a sense briefly of the environment?
Yeah, the downstairs, the entire area might be 1,000 to 1,100 square feet, so a very small home.
Right.
With another maybe 400 square feet up top. Each crew member essentially got their very own closet to sleep in. It's about the size of the bed, and that's it.
Yeah.
You can have a shower, but you get 2 minutes of shower water per person per week, so make it quick.
Yeah.
And
can you explain why there's only 2 minutes worth of water?
Yeah, you were just not allowed to use it. Essentially, there's only so much water on the planet you would be able to use. It would have to go through $1 million water recycling machine.
Right.
And it's just part of the keeping supplies as efficient as possible.
Yeah. So that's pointing out, was there recycling going on? Yes.
Oh yeah.
And certainly there were water deliveries. But it is very much limited, and there were some interesting stories where systems didn't necessarily always work. So food.
Food. We have a shipping container full of high-quality survival rations.
Yeah.
So the stuff you'd see online where it's like an old coffee can with, say, chunk salmon, but it's like $85 for that can because once you put hot water in, it's pretty freaking good. Like, the whole time I was in school, grad school, everything, like, call it that 9-year period, like, in the dome with the dehydrated survival food was the best I ate. Like, by a long shot. I made double-layer chocolate cakes, mole sauce, enchiladas.
Wow.
Cool. I invented the pizza cupcake.
Yeah, a pizza cupcake. Oh, man. Okay, now you're talking. My kind of grub would be fun. How did the sort of day-to-day tasks as opposed to the research? I guess I'm still trying to get a sense of what it was like to be in the dome socially, because that's really what this whole experiment is about. Was there a lot of camaraderie, a lot of stress, a lot of, just... And what did you guys do as a group? Because there's just the 6 of you for 366 days, no real time. You have no you have no internet access in terms of being able to browse and say, is Earth still with us?
Yeah.
So
no phones.
No phones. It's how did that play?
You do a lot of stuff together because you have to.
Right.
We had maybe 15 official experiments and then maybe 10 of our own that we're just doing for our own personal research. And a lot of those were extravehicular activities where you would be doing well-coordinated group work trying to do stuff in caves or out with cones. Just traffic cones we had taken out and navigating the lava. Inside, there's team building exercise where you're trying to maximize your personal score and the team score, and it's sort of testing how an individual will favor themselves versus the group with various scenarios, and it's all pretty subtle.
Yeah, yeah.
And outside of that, there's definitely I wouldn't call it a schism so much, but there's always the person, say, at work, where you get along with them the best, they get your humor, whatever else.
Right.
And, they'll be your go-to lunch person, for example. There's definitely that in the Dome as well. So when...
just on a smaller scale.
Yeah, on a smaller scale.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You're talking about the social aspects of life there. The first thing you have to do is remove all the social interactions you might have with family because they're not there anymore. You don't have the ability to be an uncle or a brother or an aunt or anything of that sort. You don't have lovers or dating relationships. It's just you have your coworkers. So your society has become massively simplified, and now you're trying to sort of fill the social gaps that have been created with the people that you're with. So
yeah, I want to come back to that, but we're sitting here talking, and I want to explore the EVAs a little bit as well. But my apologies, listeners. I do think I've made an assumption. We haven't let people know where you are. So where is the Dome? And let's just describe that a little bit,
sure.
because that plays into the importance of what happened and where all this is and why the study took place where it did. But can you fill us in? Where is this?
Yeah, it's a geodesic dome, so just a half sphere, like a half of a buckyball,
right.
Covered in tarp, and it is up on a quarry that's about 8,200 foot elevation from sea level, halfway up Mauna Loa on the Big Island of Hawaii. Just barren old lava flows as far as you can see. Some of them are the really smooth lava flow that looks like frozen syrup and you can run around on it. Others look like peanut brittle from hell.
Yeah.
Incredibly difficult to get across. I went through like 4 pairs of hiking boots.
Yeah. I recall I had to help buy parents because they do these resupply missions, and so if we learn that one of the astronauts, and we most of us are taking care of our own family members, if you will, although you can send things for anybody if you really wanted to, but it takes some time, so we would buy a pair of boots and it gets sent, and then when the resupply mission approaches Mars and drops some stuff off, so that's how they got through some of this. And I can assure you, I was out with my wife when they returned to Earth. So we were at the Hab when they came back and got to explore this area. And when Tristan shares that this is some rugged, remote, crazy places, I'm telling you, it is. And we talked about caves. And these are lava tubes they're exploring. And I assume, well, I guess I don't assume because I know, but again, let's share with our listeners here. You talk about being restricted to the Dome, and then we have these EVAs. This is not, put on a t-shirt and a pair of shoes and go explore. Can you describe this a little bit?
Yeah, if you want to get outside, and it's not for a normal mission thing, because, we've got all of our regular EVAs. Like, so let's say I just want to go for a walk, essentially. Right. I would need to create a sort of EVA plan, so like a map and a list of activities, where I'd like to go, what I'm doing, and a time for it. Right. I have to submit that to mission support, and they will approve or deny it. They usually approve it.
And there really is, again, there is mission support. These are people on the ground. There's these delays. It's just like dealing with mission control if you're on the moon, except
much
further out. So there are all these time delays.
Yeah, if I'd like to go outside, I won't even get the basic yes or no for maybe 25, 30 minutes if they're watching their email in that moment. It'll normally take several hours. But let's say it's...
so it's approved.
Yeah, let's say it's approved.
Right.
Then the next day, because it's definitely not going to happen the same day, I need to get at least 4 people together, including myself, so that I've got a buddy to go out with me. I need a HABCOM person to man the radio and monitor where we're at, and then a scribe who will work with HABCOM to write down what we're doing, when we did it, important bits of the conversation to send all this data back, since it's part of the experiment. And if you were actually on Mars, you would, of course, need to do this as well. Then you need to put on a simulated spacesuit or the hazmat suits. Wrap your shoes in duct tape and other protection because it is very rough.
It is like glass.
You need to set yourself up with a camelback, a headset that goes around your neck or your ears and hooks into your walkie-talkie, and get your fans all set up to keep you cool. That takes about an hour to 90 minutes, and then you've got to go into our little airlock, which is between the habitat and our storage container, which is where all our old supplies are. And just count down from 5 minutes. Wait for the pressure to simulate getting pumped out.
Right, decompression. You're right.
Then you can go outside. So, and then you, of course, have to follow your mission plan and take pictures and do all the rest. So it's still work.
Yeah.
If you want to go for a walk, it will take you 24 hours and a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing, if you even just have, sometimes I think just day-to-day regular work, every once in a while, something stressful happens, and you just need 5 minutes, or you just need to go out and calm down or relax or just take a break and things. This is a day's work.
Yeah.
Okay. How did that impact you and your colleagues?
You have got to do other things, like say exercise. We probably did an average of 2 to 5 hours a day just to resist cabin fever more than anything, get out the stresses. You can shout into a pillow. You can talk calmly with the person driving you crazy, because if you get into an actual argument, that's kind of going to be awkward for quite a while. It's hard to repair a relationship when you can't escape each other, calm down. So while you could say go into your room, you can still hear everybody in the habitat, or you could go hang out in the shipping container, but then you're just standing next to a bunch of crates of food in the dark. So there's not really I'm going to go to the cafe and relax for a bit. You can put on the VR headset and look at a beach, but you've got to set up the computer, and it's not easy.
Let me share a story. I can share now. Tristan is certainly someone who is in great shape. Prior to his time in the Dome, I never knew him to be much of a runner. I mean, he certainly would work out and do things, but this guy was not what I would call a hardcore runner in any way, shape, or form. And you ran a complete marathon in this Dome on a treadmill. And this was not the world's most sophisticated, high-tech, brand new kind of piece of equipment.
No, Soviet Russia for sure.
And I just share that because, I think it's important to understand what we're really talking about here. I mean, to work out on this crazy treadmill with am I remembering correctly, just one window, which is a small little window to look outside.
Pizza, give or take.
Yeah, okay, so the size of medium pizza. And you can run on the treadmill and look out that window. I just think, to me, that struck a chord with me in this sense of, wow, just to try to make things work, this is how far you go. And you run a marathon. And there was a lot of joy and pride and working to this. I mean, I think it became something of a goal for everybody to have these kinds of accomplishments. Before I get to some final questions, I want to give you a moment or two. Are there any sort of interesting stories, anything you'd like to share, something kind of fun or unique about the whole experience?
I think some of the most interesting parts of it, were, of course, what you found you could get through, or how you might react to stress. I have very little doubt that given the right crew, I could definitely do it for real. You're going to suffer a lot, but it can be worth it. Marathons are never comfortable, but they're always worth it at the end. But I was quite astounded by the geography out there that you don't see typically. If you're just standing at the Dome, and you were looking around, it looks like a bunch of lava flows and rocks, and it's barren countryside.
It is very barren. That's right.
In my time there, I discovered completely on my own, or with Carmel or Cyprian, just out looking.
Fellow astronauts.
Perhaps 50 lava tubes, some of them with caves inside bigger than a house, skylights with beams coming down 2 stories, and a little patch of plants growing out. Weird, undulating, just smooth caverns moving through the countryside. And one of them, we hiked underground for maybe a kilometer and then popped out the other side. We got to map these things and just see the most ridiculous geography you can imagine under there, with stalactites of frozen lava and crystals and all these things, and surreal.
Yeah. So when I hear that, actually, in some ways, would it be correct to say that these experiences of really exploring in so many ways, it really is just a foreign landscape. Very few people live in this kind of landscape. There's obviously people in Hawaii that are quite familiar with it. But would that become something of a sanctuary, just to go out and see and explore some terrain that's just very, very new and very, very different?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we actually ended up doing a great deal of lava tube exploration and mapping. Sort of additionally that we weren't required to do,
right?
But we just enjoyed being underground so much. Like once you get in there, you're out of the sun, your suit cools down. The geography is amazing. Cyprian and I actually rappelled down a skylight and found a little cave and crawled to the back, and there was a sort of a hole in there about the size of a lounge chair or whatever. Yeah. And with our flashlights and everything else, we could not find the bottom, sides, or top. It was a black hole into an endless abyss. And we both said, let's not come back here.
Yeah. Whoops, wrong footing, or just
definitely. Like it'd be cool to go back with like real climbing gear and a team and see what's up, because
maybe fly some little
put a drone or something
drone down.
But I feel like if I had fallen into that, I'd still be falling.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know
wow.
what it was.
That's very cool. Would you do it again?
I would absolutely do an experiment of that nature again.
Yeah.
At the time of my life, it was like perfect for finishing dissertation.
Right.
Like right now, working freelance, paying off student loans. It wouldn't be quite so in keeping with my direction, but if I got hired as a space architect for SpaceX, for example, and they needed the crew to do a 6 month to practice and stuff like
and I see where you're going, but let me take that even further. Okay, so you've had this simulated experience, and let's say SpaceX and one of these other companies really does get it together. The equipment's there, and they're going to send a crew up. And I don't know, it's 10, it's 20. I don't know what these early crews will look like, but it's and I think you would agree with me that, these early flights, the first manned flights, even if they have stuff already on Mars in terms of robotics and, a little fuel or water already there waiting and that kind of thing, I think it's pretty much a given that this would be a one-way trip. Would you disagree with that?
Yeah, it's actually relatively safe. It's probably safer to do it than it would be to sail to America way back in like the 1600s.
Well, that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah,
okay.
Like you're going to go, and the ship design will either have it so that when you land, there's already a robotic craft that has fuel waiting for you. Or you will stay a full year and make some more fuel and then come back. So it'll either be like a 3-year round trip or like a 5-year round trip. But as long as you don't have a crazy equipment malfunction or a solar flare that kills everything on your way out.
See, that's the radiation piece of this, and the low G environment for an extended period of time. I still think there's a lot of medical kinds of things we don't know. But okay, that's getting on a tangent here for a moment. But I guess what I'd say, so you've had this simulated experience. And Elon calls up, says, "Hey, I saw the podcast. There's a podcast about it. It's called The Habitat. If you want some fun, 6 episodes. I encourage you to take a look. It's that's a lot of fun too. But and he says, Tristan, we've heard about you. We'd like to get an architect up there and just have some experience to help with future design. We want to see what it's like to experience the space of the transportation space as well as a livable space out there. So you're the guy. Would you go?"
Yeah, I would not hesitate at all. That'd be the life's dream, essentially.
And how about, I guess it's. I take that at face value because, to be honest, if they offered, said your dad has a slot too if he wants to go, it's like, honey, I'm going. Would you like to come? Because you and I are just those kinds of folks. It's a great unknown, and the call to go see and experience that. I get that. Thinking about that, however, in light of the simulation you did go through, are there learnings or takeaways that you have? I know NASA and these universities have been processing data, and I don't think as of yet there's been any formal reports released. There's just so much data here to process. But where do you come out with this experience in terms of will the crew, using the Elon SpaceX example, make it in terms of the social dynamics? What are the challenges? What do you take away from the experience?
You're going to have two major obstacles to get over, and the main one is the fact that you're in this small space with people, so it's going to be who are you taking with you? Like, if you're going to actually go on the real mission, you would go through a great deal more selection than I went through. Like, more tests.
Right.
You would probably do 3 months completely isolated on a mountain with your crew to try and find out, like, where friction might exist. And there would be shakeups and changes for probably 5 years leading up to the mission. So the crew you end up sending is probably going to be
the
rock
best
solid.
of the best that just
They can read each other's minds, and they all admire and respect each other. They know when to shut up, they know when to speak.
Right.
Like, it'll be a flawless crew. After that, you have to realize that if you put any person in a barren white room for long enough, they'll go insane and start talking to themselves. You need environmental stimulation, you need social stimulation. If you can build a small craft to get there, or a large base once you're there using robotics or whatever else, that's able to, as much as possible, simulate the social and environmental complexity of your life on Earth, you will be happier.
Yeah.
That's it. If you can just, like, not sell your soul for mission success and remember who you are and what makes you able to last. This isn't a marathon. This is running around the world over a year. If you don't stop and take care of yourself, you're going to break.
And that's kind of where I want to go here in a little bit and wrap all this up. I've had the great pleasure an opportunity to speak with some of the people that designed the mission and some of the researchers. And Tristan hasn't shared this yet, but I can share that what became very important, I think, not only for Tristan, but truly for the entire crew. One of Tristan's contributions was just to bring a sense of humor. Any comments on how humor played into? Would you agree that was an important component to kind of keep yourself and everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, at the end of the day, stuff's going to happen with people who are being intransient, or an environment that wants to kill you, or a ship that's not working quite as well, or all of the pancake batter runs out, and now we've got to eat healthier stuff for 2 months until the resupply comes. You can't control any of those things, but you can control how you react to them. And if you have to choose between levity or getting really down about it, I mean, one of those is going to lead to a better income. If you watch The Martian, Mark Watney's stuck up there for a long time. So he starts making light of himself and talking to potatoes and asking goofy questions, and that will save you.
And what I liked about it, because we had some conversation via email, and there's some other ways that we were communicating that we can't get into right now, but in terms of just there were different technologies being tested throughout this simulation. But one of the things that I started to see, just as somebody monitoring and watching a little bit, you guys quickly had to get to the point of where we can't control this, and life's too freaking short. And so instead of getting upset, you had to try to find other outlets to include, if it takes a day to get outside to walk, you do that, or you have some fun, practical jokes a little bit that are harmless, and those kinds of things. Let me, as we start to wrap this up, and I want to sort of tie it back to some earlier comments you made, would it be fair to say, too, that an important takeaway would be really beginning to understand the importance of support systems? I recall hearing from all of you in different ways that it was surprising who stayed the course throughout the entire 365 days of trying to remain in contact, and who said they would at the beginning and then just drop off the earth or off the map or radar, whatever you want to talk about here. So could you share just a comment or two on the value of support systems?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of especially an American cultural thing where, for men especially, like we're all an island and we're not supposed to like need or desire anything from anybody. And
right.
Those are typically the types that end up in the woods by themselves in a cabin.
Well, it's the classic right stuff when you think about the early astronauts.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you think of not Neil Armstrong, call it Buzz Aldrin. Like he's got a hell of an attitude. He absolutely knows his stuff. Extremely, cocksure and independent.
It's Frank Borman too. Same kind of guy.
Same kind of guy. And when it comes to, we need to put you in this tin can full of, dynamite and throw you at the moon. Can you handle this? Like, those are the types that are going to be able to do it.
Right.
And admire the hell out of it. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
You do not want to go on a 9-month camping trip with that guy because he's going to make the best fire and he's going to cook all the best food and his bow line is going to be better than everybody's. And eventually, that sort of confidence, whether it's deserved or not, it becomes incredibly abrasive. And when you start getting into a mission length for anything from living at sea to going to Mars, you need people who are emotionally empathetic, who can listen as much as they can take care of you. Maybe they are hot shit, can do whatever, but they don't need to toot their own horn. They're self-confident about it and don't need praise. They will see problems before they're developing and take care of it when it's just a gentle issue versus requiring a massive fix.
Yeah. Well, in kind of closing, from my own perspective, I'd like to share, I was Earthbound Dad, and my wife and I, we took the time to resupply, and we took some time to interact with the astronauts in a simulated environment that was being studied and tested, and there were all kinds of things we did. And it became very apparent to me that support systems, both internal to the environment that the simulated Martian astronauts were experiencing, became very, very important, but so did support systems on the ground. And then there was this other component, which we've kind of been talking about just a little bit, from the importance of, even if it takes 24 hours to get approval, but you need your time to go out and experience something, to get away, to have a break. And you talk about the time, learning to cook and eating some healthy food and investing in exercise. And my takeaway is just, I walked away from that saying, boy, here we are taking people and putting them in an extreme environment, in an extreme stressful situation, and seeing what happens. And thankfully we can do it here on the ground, because if this thing goes ballistic in space and somebody just decides I've had enough and opens the door in space, everybody's dead, and on a Martian volcano, or I'm sorry, on a Hawaiian volcano, that's not the true outcome. But I think as I look at practices, legal practices, and the life that so many attorneys lead, I just think there are a lot of takeaways from that experience that are relevant to all of us. And I encourage you, if you're listening and find yourself in a stressful situation at work, to look to your support systems, to try to emphasize, if we already aren't, behaviors that lead to wellness, and behaviors that work for you. I'm not trying to suggest you go out and learn to run and get a treadmill and do a marathon on a treadmill. You can ride bike, you can go fishing, you can learn to cook, whatever floats your boat. But I do think my observation from everything these 6 folks went through was just to say, wellness and support systems are far more important than I ever really honestly realized, and that has impacted me ever since. I'm very, very proud of all the folks that went through this and was able to be there when they returned to Earth, and it's something I will never forget, and I just lived it vicariously through my son. So Tristan, before we close out, is there any final comment you'd like to share? Anything else? I do really appreciate you taking a little time here with Dad. But
no, I mean, I worked in a firm for nearly 2 years before going freelance with design and architecture, and know what it's like to be in a very stressful environment where your boss doesn't super appreciate you, and you're working 75, 80 hours a week, but being paid for 40, and everybody kind of does it because, we're professionals, and it's a pretty unsupportive, toxic culture. And I would say that a quote I enjoyed, and it applies, call it the riches of your self-life or your intrinsic value, that sort of thing, is try not to be the richest guy in the graveyard.
Yeah.
You don't need to be the most successful guy at work. You don't need to be the CEO. You don't need to have everybody like you. Like, if you just get by, take care of yourself, take care of the people that matter to you, and have a good life, like, you won.
Yeah.
Already. You don't need to be, Mr. Work guy and everybody's go-to person, and especially when they're not taking care of you either.
Right. The way I've said that over the years, it really isn't. Whoever has the most toys doesn't win. Yeah. At the end, it's not about toys. It's about the experience. So, well, Tristan, I really, really appreciate your willingness to take the time and sit down and have a chat with Dad, but to also allow all these other folks that are listening in to be part of our conversation. So thank you very much. To all of you listening out there, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast and found something of interest or value to it. Please, as always, if any of you have any topics of interest or other folks that you'd like to see if we can interview at some point, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email address is mbass, B-A-S-S, @alpsnet.com. Thanks, folks. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.